The Hateful Eight is a 2015 murder mystery western, written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. It stars Samuel L. Jackson, Kurt Russell, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Walton Goggins, and Demian Bichir. A stagecoach travelling across the snow-drenched mountains of Wyoming is brought to an abrupt halt upon meeting a cloaked figure in the middle of the road. The man turns out to be a bounty hunter, whose horse collapsed as a result of the severe negative temperatures. He requests that the driver, OB, bring him to the relatively nearby town of Red Rock in order to survive the torrentious elements. OB tells him that he'll have to ask the passenger currently occupying the coach if he doesn't mind. When approaching the window of the carriage, the bounty hunter is met by the business end of a Smith & Wesson rifle. The wielder of the gun orders the bounty hunter to lay down his arms and immediately identify himself. The bounty hunter addresses himself as Major Marquis Warren. It turns out that the gunman is none other than the infamous Hangman John Ruth. As it turns out, Ruth had ate lunch with the Major several months prior, and as a result of already being acquaintances, he begins to lower his guard ever so slightly. However, the Hangman is reluctant to aid the Major with his luggage, as his hands are literally tied with his live bounty, Daisy Domaru, played by Jason Jennifer Leigh. Root, intending to live up to his title, refuses to kill Domaru, but instead plans to deliver her to Red Rock, where she will be hanged at high noon. In the distance, OB spots the minuscule silhouette of a man who seems to be seeking refuge from the blizzard. John Root recognizes him as one of Maddox's Marauders, a renegade group who fought for the South during the Civil War. Given the family history of this stranger, the Hangman is more than hesitant to give him a lift. Root's mind is rapidly changed when the man informs him that he is soon to be the new sheriff of Red Rock. Knowing that he is risking being charged with murder if he is responsible for Maddox freezing to death, Root tells the Major to scooch over and allowed the rumoured sheriff to climb aboard. Only half trusting his sheriff's story, Root tells Warren to keep the sights of his pistol firmly fixed on the newly acquired passenger for the remainder of the journey. Deciding that the storm is too bad to allow them to carry on safely, OB makes the decision to stop at Minnie's haberdashery, a bed and breakfast that Major Warren has visited on numerous occasions. Instead of being greeted by the proprietors Minnie or Sweet Dave, the weary travellers are welcomed by a Mexican named Bob. Bob helps bring the horses into the stable. Given his occupation of bounty hunter, Major Warren possesses a somewhat natural detective's intuition. He inquires with Bob as to where Minnie and Sweet Dave happen to be at this moment. The Mexican replies that the husband and wife have gone to the other side of the mountain to visit Minnie's elderly mother. Knowing that Sweet Dave has a disposition to travelling, Major Warren's sense of suspicion begins to set in. Inside the warmth of the cabin, John Root is welcomed by three mysterious figures. These include a hangman, a cowboy, and a southern general. Upon meeting these strangers, John Root's sense of paranoia begins to set in, and becomes immediately wary of the unknown guest he has just become acquainted with. Despite being regular lodgers of the haberdashery over the years, this will be the most eventful night that either Major Warren or John the Hangman Root have spent there in their entire lives. Tarantino had originally intended for The Hateful Eight to be a murder mystery novel, but as time went by his writing began to read more like a film script as opposed to a book. Unfortunately, after converting his intended novel to a script, the documents were somehow mysteriously leaked. Feeling discouraged by this unfortunate event, Tarantino scrapped the idea of going ahead with the film and instead assembled a would-be cast for a stage reading. The reading went down a storm with the crowd, and encouraged Tarantino to recommence toying with the idea of making the then play into a fully fledged motion picture. Tarantino, who was an avid lover of film, not only the medium but the actual physical substance, pondered how he would have his movie physically distributed, as opposed to being digitally downloaded by cinema chains. Quentin came to the conclusion that in order to prevent his film from being distributed entirely digitally, he would have to rely on a medium that had yet to be utilised in the 21st century, 70mm film strip. 70mm was a medium of film reserved for Hollywood's biggest productions. The format was used for films such as Lawrence of Arabia, Battle of the Bulge, and David Lynch's space epic Dune. Given that 70 had been somewhat defunct for the past 30 years, the lenses required to shoot this ultra-wide picture were no longer in production. Whilst visiting Panavision, it was brought to the attention of cinematographer Robert Richardson the lenses that were used to shoot Ben-Hur were still being kept in storage. Richardson brought the lenses to Colorado to shoot some test footage to see if the picture was up to Tarantino standards. Needless to say, both the director and the producers were more than impressed with what Richardson presented them. Tarantino wanted to treat audience members to an actual movie-going experience, as opposed to just renting a seat for 3 hours. In order to achieve this, he released a roadshow version of the film. The roadshow version featured an overture, an intermission, 10 extra minutes of film, and a fully coloured programme with images and stills from the movie. Tarantino, who usually shies away from unique scores for his movies in favour of soundtracks, thought the material he had just written deserved some original music. Sticking to his main influence of The Thing, Tarantino settled for the man who composed the soundtrack for the 1982 horror, Italian musician Ennio Morricone. After previewing the script to Morricone and his wife, he was only delighted to be part of the production. But when Tarantino informed him that he had less than a month to provide the score to the film, Morricone knew he would have to push both his creative and musical talents to the limits in order to meet the fast approaching deadline. With less than a week to go, the composer provided Tarantino with a fully mixed score, as well as tracks containing the individual instruments. Tarantino was over the moon with what Morricone had provided him with. The Rush score would prove so strong that it would eventually go on to win an Oscar and a Golden Globe for Best Original Score. To create conflict between the residents of the snow-surrounded cabin, Tarantino chose to set the film in the time period that shortly preceded the Civil War, with half the occupants on the blue side of the divide and the remainder on the red. Both Kurt Russell and Jennifer Jason Leigh work perfectly together as the bounty hunter and a soon-to-be-hanged captured outlaw. Russell and Leigh admitted that once filming had wrapped, it was a quite strange sensation to be eating a meal without somebody being chained to you. We are once again treated to an outstanding performance by Samuel L. Jackson. Jackson proved so superior in the role that he was nominated for an Oscar, but was unfortunately pipped at the post by Leonardo DiCaprio, who scooped up the gong for his part in The Revenant. Although this movie creeps along at a sometimes standstill pace, it helps the audience become more familiar with the mysterious characters, as well as allowing them to jump to multiple conclusions as to who the actual killer is. If you have a good amount of patience and enjoy the suspense of a murder mystery, then definitely make sure to check out The Hateful Eight.